You are walking down a dark, damp sewer. After narrowly escaping from a horde of black puddings that have been chasing you for hours, you see out of the corner of your eye a waterlogged chest off to the side of the room. You examine the chest and realize that it's full of treasure, but locked. You go to make quick work of the tumblers, like so many in the past, when on the side of the chest you see, written in Old Elvish as an inscription. It reads, "Insert $5 for a chance at fabulous prizes?" So I was going back and watching some old Acquisitions Incorporated footage from the various PAXs over the years, when I ran into one from PAX East 2018, in which Mike the Dungeon Master has the party stumble across a chest in a room. The party was in part of a Battle Royale session, and as such had limitations on the number of magical items that they had with a cap of 4. Upon opening the chest, he then offers the players the ability to have another chest for $5. He says that all items found in the chest will always have 4 and will be random each time. Morgan, one of the player characters, immediately hands Mike a $5 bill and is then rewarded with 4 more additional magic items that she is free to pass out, trade, etc. This got me thinking, what, if any, role do loot boxes have in Dungeons & Dragons to kind of spice up more casual sessions? So let's start off by saying we're going to be leaving some companies out of the conversation. But that being said, loot boxes are huge in the gaming industry right now. Whether it be MMORPGs, first-person shooters, or dare I say it, mobile games. Consumers have been flooding to loot boxes for years now, and it's not just because of their gamer-addicted personalities. It has been scientifically proven that there is a rush of dopamine, which is the chemical substance that brings your brain joy, not only when you receive something good out of a loot box, but the mere opening of a loot box itself. Science aside, loot boxes is a little bit of a difficult concept to throw into Dungeons & Dragons, as in other video games they typically contain things like weapon skins, character outfits, or small interactive pets that serve no actual importance to the gameplay itself. Dungeons & Dragons, it's much less visual than a video game, and there's a lot less emphasis on how your character looks, as it may only be described one time in an entire session. Thus, the beauty of loot boxes in Dungeons & Dragons comes from its ability to bestow items onto a character at any time, whether it comes from the story relevant or not. Now, obviously, this is not a concept that should be used in very serious games with very serious roleplay aspects, but in one-offs or campaigns that don't even take themselves that serious, it could be used to spice up those kind of settings. And for those of you who are already saying, RPGMD, shut up, do not give Wizards of the Coast any idea, I'm sad to tell you they already know about this and have a little bit of a loot box of their own. Now, rolling randomly for loot is not a concept that is entirely foreign to Dungeons & Dragons, as this was actually one of the initial ways that characters were rewarded loot in the original Dungeons & Dragons. In addition to this, random treasure generators have also permeated Dungeons & Dragons and are available still online for pretty much every edition of Dungeons & Dragons. Thus, the only thing that loot boxes could really change about playing a session is, like I said before, the ability to obtain an item even when the story doesn't allow for it. And it is because of this that it allows the Dungeon Master a little more freedom in terms of rewarding players for good behaviors than typical kind of story-based reward systems do. Now, if you've decided to go ahead and sell your soul and include loot boxes in your campaign, luckily the internet has provided us a resource that allows us to do so. There's an Excel sheet, so I'm sorry to anyone who's getting terrible office job flashbacks, but that allows characters to roll a d100 to determine the box's rarity, which will then kind of give you an idea of how likely you are to get ultra rare items out of the box. Every box will then spit out 4 random items for your character, and these can be continually rolled and updated as your characters go on. Inside these loot boxes are things like weapon skins, but those are the most common. It also does include physical items such as magical weapons, potions, and magical rings that give powers to players. And it is even suggested that you give these out more freely than you might think, even for a character just recapping what happened last week, doing a great roleplay moment, etc. However, I would advise you to rein this in a little bit, as material rewards are one of the main motivators for characters in Dungeons & Dragons, And if you start just passing out items willy-nilly, those kind of off-the-wall moments where characters find this awesome, massive item are going to be left by the wayside. And thus, like I said before, this is not for your every week with the same people kind of campaign, but if you're just doing a Dungeons & Dragons campaign to kill each other, why the hell not just drop a bunch of random murder weapons in? I will put a link in the description below for the loot box generator that you can find and use on your own. I don't think that this is something I'm going to be using every week in my campaign by any means, but I am considering it throwing in my next one-off, especially if I decide to go the Battle Royale aspect. That being said, I have never used loot boxes before, and I'm not really sure what my players will do with it. So if any of you have any experience with running loot box or rewarding items in this kind of more random lesson, let me hear about it. It could also be a great idea if you're just that desperate for cash and want to milk your players for money. That being said, that pretty much wraps up everything I have to say about loot boxes, and it's more just a discussion topic so that I could hear what you guys had to say. But I'd love you, love you, love you forever if you liked, favorite, and subscribed. I'm RPGMD. You can find all my previous content over here or over here, and I'll see you guys next week.